Hey guys, so in my last two My Life with ADHD videos, I talked a bit about what it's like, both emotionally and experience-wise, to grow up as a girl diagnosed with ADHD at a very young age in the 90s. In the follow-up video, I talked about what it's like to be a 34-year-old adult woman with ADHD who grew up from that girl. So in today's My Life with ADHD, I actually wanted to talk about some of the things that I do to kind of find or force focus. So as I've mentioned in some of my other My Life with ADHD videos, I am not currently on medication. However, all of the things I'm going to recommend, for the most part, there's one exception that I don't necessarily recommend, but it's something that I do. All of the things that I'm going to recommend work great if you're also on medication. So think of these really as something anybody can do. You don't have to just be ADHD. It's also great if you're not ADHD and you're having trouble finding focus, getting in the zone, or getting your work done. So one of the things I did to help me prepare for this video was to make a list, because even though I had an idea, I had the motivation, and I had the time to do it, I didn't necessarily have the brain space. And that's one of the big things I think a lot of us with ADHD struggle with, is there's so much noise going on in our brains and we're very easily distracted. And I don't just mean distracted as in going off task, I literally mean outside influences basically steal the thoughts right out of our brains sometimes. So making lists, getting those ideas down so you're not trying to constantly remember them, is a wonderful idea. Many of us do have short-term memory problems. List making and note-taking are two great skills anybody can adopt that will help you stay on track. In fact, the more stressed out you are, the more you're juggling, the more pressure you're under, the more likely you are to start having short-term memory problems. So this is true for parents, it's true for students, it's true for people in high-pressure jobs. It's not just us ADHD folks who should go to turn to lists. And I know I have so many ADHD friends who really don't like lists. They really don't like the idea of the structure, and they feel it's going to stifle them. But for me, lists are just a jumping off point. They're an inspiration. They're like the must-do things, and then everything else is extra. So it makes sure that I get the things I really, really want to get done, the things I really don't want to forget. It makes sure I get them done. And on a similar note, our ADHD tangents outlines for storytelling. It's like a list. You don't have to stick to it, but it helps you remember what's going to happen in your story. It's a roadmap that tells you where your story is going to go. You can always take detours. You can always pencil in a new destination, but having that outline helps you get to that finish line. And I have so many ADHD friends who are comic artists who start comics and drop those comics because they forgot where it's going, or it changed so drastically that they didn't want to continue it. And having that outline can kind of create a little bit of accountability, and it can make it a little bit easier to stay on task. So we have our notes, so our list, sorry. So one of the first things that I need for finding or forcing focus is coffee. I've mentioned in some of the other My Life with ADHD videos that I am currently not medicated. I have been medicated in the past, and as a non-healthcare, non-professional, no healthcare experience, no professional, just life experience. So as always, you should talk to a doctor, you should talk to a therapist, you should talk to someone who is licensed to help you in this. But since I am not medicated, I do need that extra bit of stimulation to help my brain wake up and help my brain focus, and coffee is a huge part of my work life and my focus life. So folks with ADHD, coffee doesn't necessarily make us hyper. Sometimes it can actually make us sleepy. The caffeine does something that allows our brains to focus a little bit more. So the second thing on my focus list is making a list. So we talked about that. Making a list also helps you kind of collate your thoughts. It gets you thinking about the things you want to accomplish either that day or that task or that project or that goal in an actionable way. So it takes something that's kind of nebulous and lofty, and it gives it definition, it gives it parameters. And many of us may act like we don't like structure, but we really like it, and it really helps us. And for me, that structure of the list is really, really helpful. Then sometimes if making a list isn't enough, prioritizing that list, because a lot of us have executive dysfunction disorder, is that it? Where we have a really difficult time prioritizing the things in our life. So if someone were to give me a list of 5 things I needed to do, and they weren't in any particular order, I might have difficulty deciding which is the one I should get done first, which is the most important. And so for me, sitting down and actually prioritizing it before I start doing the tasks kind of takes some of that pressure in the moment of deciding what should I do next. And then, you know, we spend a lot of time just kind of spinning out, trying to make ourselves work. Doing that prioritization as a separate step rather than as I'm doing it helps kind of front load that thinking process. So I try to do a lot of the decision making in the beginning rather than in the midst of the project, because that's what tends to slow me down. If I know what I'm doing and I know what order I'm doing it, I can get everything done. And this isn't every single day. I mean, I'm not a machine. I don't spend every day with my life scheduled out to the T's, but there's definitely days where I have things I absolutely have to get done. Maybe I'm in Nashville and I'm working on Kara stuff and I'm preparing to go to Louisiana and I know I won't be able to get those things done in Louisiana. So that's when really hyper-focusing, making a list and structuring my days so those things get done is really important for me. But I don't live every day with like a checklist of things I have to do. So I don't want to give you guys that impression. So another thing I do to help find or force my focus is I play a little game I call What's the Least I Can Do. And I've heard other people talk about it. I didn't make it up, but it's a great game. It's really good when your motivation is tapped out, or maybe you're kind of depressed and you don't have that intrinsic motivation to help you get started. And what you do is you take your list, and rather than going with the most important, highest priority thing, you find the smallest thing you can do on your list, the easiest thing you can do on your list. And it's okay to take a bath, brush my teeth, eat breakfast, feed the cat on that list, because it's about creating a chain of success. So with the least I can do, what's the least I can do in the morning? Okay, the least I can do is I can get out of bed. Okay, that's one thing off my checklist. Then what's the least thing I can do? Well, I can brush my teeth. Okay, that's 2. That's a track record of 2 successful things this morning. Okay, well, what's another thing I could do? Well, I could take a bath. Okay, that's another check off my list. And eventually, after about 5 or 6 actionable items, I kind of get into the zone and my brain's finally awake and I'm finally motivated. For me, starting routines is difficult, but maintaining routines is easy, which is why for me, Inktober is so easy, because it's like once I get it started, it's just the same thing I'm doing every day with a creative twist. So I can't speak for everyone with ADHD, but that is very appealing to my mind. I really like these sort of ordered sets, right? Like I like drawing, like if I'm going to draw flowers, I want to draw 16 different flowers, you know, because then I have this really nice, satisfying grid of 16 flowers. Or if I'm doing comic pages, it's really satisfying to do a chapter at a time, because then I have this success record. So least I can do is a good way to kind of help get over that initial inertia. And it doesn't have to just be in the morning. It can be any time you just are, you really like, you have to get stuff done. You can't sit there and do nothing, and you can't just play Animal Crossing. You got to do something. Well, maybe doing the dishes, maybe eating some lunch, maybe going for a walk. All of those are great ways to start adding some stability and some structure to your life. So the least I can do is one of my favorite games to play with myself. So it kind of ties into doing routine and warm-ups. So I know not every ADHD person feels like they like structure. A lot of my ADHD friends who say they don't like structure, if I'm doing it with them, they tend to like it because then it's like an accountability thing and it's a friendship thing, and they're not using all their motivation and all their willpower to force themselves to do something. We're doing it as a group. So sometimes having Accountabilibuddies or a group that you do these sort of things with can really help. So that could be really useful for like exercise, and it needs to be people you enjoy spending this time with. It doesn't have to be your best friends. If your best friends don't enjoy this activity, don't involve them. Get involved with people who actually do enjoy this activity if you can. I know it's hard to find people who share your interests sometimes. Like I have a lot of friends who make comics, but I don't have a lot of close friends who want to be professional comic artists anymore. So I don't have those kind of accountability buddies. So I get where you're, if that's your issue, I get where you're coming from. And it does add a challenge. None of these suggestions are like ever going to be 100% perfect suggestions for every single person. You're always going to have to try and tweak things and make it your own. But these are the things that work for me. And anyway, ADHD off topic. So I really like routine. And I really like doing warm-ups, so like drawing warm-ups. So I haven't been doing them while I'm in Louisiana. My life has just been, I've had other priorities, which is fine. It's okay to take breaks, but I'm going to get right back on it when I get back to Nashville. But I'm going to go grab my sketchbook, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so this is a newer sketchbook. It doesn't have that many examples in it. I didn't bring my older one because I was traveling. And the thing about this is it doesn't have to be perfect. I think a lot of ADHD people, we feel like if everything we do isn't perfect, then it's not worth doing. But there's lots of things that are just worth doing because the daily act of doing it is beneficial. So my warm-up routine is I do 2 timed figure studies, usually from Senshi Stock. I like the pose timer. I do a facial reference from Humane, which is different races, different ethnicities, and it's just face shots of them. And it's done kind of a neutral expression because I want to focus more on capturing a likeness, and then sometimes I'll draw individual elements to better understand. And then I do a expression from the expression generator on Twitter. So it probably takes about 20 minutes every day to do that, but that's my warm-up. What that does is it not only warms up my hand, it warms up my brain, it gets me thinking artistically, and it starts getting me into a groove, but it doesn't necessarily require a lot of upfront thought to do. So I do those every day if I'm in Nashville. And even though I'm not generating a lot of art that I necessarily want to show people, I am creating a body of work that I can draw from later on if I decide I want to put together like my favorite figure drawing sketches for whatever reason. I can do that. Or if I want to put together maybe a gallery of all the faces I've referenced and drawn, I can do that, all the likenesses I've done, that sort of thing. So it does give me that as well, but it's also creating a mental library of images. And I know some of my ADHD friends, when it comes to drawing, they're very, very creative people, and they're very talented artists. And they have a lot of skill, and they have a good eye, and they have like really good ideas. I am more of a workhorse artist. My brain doesn't, I was not born to be an artist. I was born to be a writer. So I had to learn everything about art the hard way. So we're very different kinds of artists. But many of my ADHD artist friends, they don't ever want to do any of the boring groundwork, and they just want to draw when inspiration strikes. But I find the more I do these, the more I'm inspired to draw, the more ideas come to my mind. So even if you don't like that sort of rigorous, daily structured drawing, it's beneficial to maybe do it for a week off and on, just to kind of add to your library. Think of it like a boot camp sort of situation. And frankly, the more you do this sort of stuff, the more you live by certain routines, the more you're going to like them, and the more you're going to find safety and stability, and you don't have to wonder what every day is going to look like. You can create your own routines as someone who is self-employed or self-educated. I don't like saying self-taught because you're using the internet to learn, but you are directing your own education. So you are creating the structure that's going to help you succeed. You're not just, like in school, so much of that structure is dictated by someone else, and it's not necessarily curated for our best interest, but we can curate our own structure as adults or as people who are directing our own education. So sometimes that doesn't work. Sometimes it really takes a lot of push. So here is something that kind of, it works for me, but it kind of plays on one of my bad traits, okay? With the procrastination, because a lot of us with ADHD, that executive decision-making problem, it means we don't get started on things. So something that actually really helps is having something else I need to do, not necessarily like an appointment or a place I absolutely have to be, or it's going to be a problem if I'm late. Because then I can't get any work done until after that's done because I'm so afraid I'm going to miss the appointment. That's like a whole other blog post. But I'm kind of heartened to hear that other people have that problem, because like, oh good, my brain's not just this unique weird thing. There's other people who struggle with this. But deciding to do something else in like 15 minutes or 30 minutes or an hour. So this is why it's not such a good thing, is it usually is, oh, I'm going to eat. When I finish this XYZ, I'm going to go eat. And what that does is it creates an artificial time limit that allows me to kind of, by procrastinating the other thing I should be doing, I do the thing I should have been doing to begin with, right? So I'm kind of, and I mean, I know I'm kind of tricking myself, but it works. The problem is, it means I get into the zone and then I don't eat for 4 hours, which is bad, not good, bad news. So that could be like going and getting a shower. It could be, oh, in 15 minutes, I'm just going to take a break and play some Animal Crossing. It could be, I'm going to go for a walk in 15 minutes. For some reason, having that discrete chunk of time allows me to kind of focus on getting those little things that tend to get pushed and pushed and pushed and never done, like responding to emails or responding to text messages or going through all the boards in the paint box and responding to the chatters, or taking photos of my art and putting them on Instagram. All the like little things that are important, but they're not hugely important, and sometimes they don't feel like they have a lot of benefit to my life, but they help other people. That's a good time to do that. Just make sure you actually go eat your food. So this kind of ties in with the Pomodoro method of like discrete chunks of 45 minutes and then you switch tasks or then you take breaks. And I have a lot of friends online who really like that method. Not only because it's actually better for your wrist than like hyper-focused drawing for 5 hours, like 45 minutes, take a break, come back to it. It gives your wrist time to rest. It gives your brain time to rest. And that's one of the downfalls of being ADHD and our hyper-focus, where we can do the same thing for 5 hours sometimes. And then sometimes it's the exact same thing and we can't seem to do it. And then people are like, what the heck is wrong with you? And it's like, I don't know. But anyway, we need breaks too. Our brains need breaks. We're getting a lot of stimulation from what we're doing. We're putting a lot of information. We're making a lot of decisions. So we do need those breaks. That hyper-focus, while wonderful, and I try to utilize it as much as I can, I definitely end up fried if I don't take breaks. So the Pomodoro method can be a really good one. Of course, somebody needs to like give me like a little electric jolt to make me actually get up out of my chair, because otherwise I'll be like, and turn off the alarm. So this is kind of a duh, but I'm always surprised by how few people actually think to do this. Come on, y'all. Music to groove to while you're working, because it engages part of your brain. And what I recommend is not new music or that album you've been looking forward to. Honestly, the music you like from high school that you still like, or the music you liked in elementary school if you're in high school, or you know what I mean? Like music you've heard a lot, you still like it, you still like the beat, but you know all the words, because it does this thing for my brain where my brain's engaged and I'm singing along, but I can very easily focus on the task. And it doesn't always work, but you know, the thing about this list is it's a rotation of different things you can try. And hopefully one of them will work for you. Another thing I do is if I'm really having a hard time, I'll alternate with Animal Crossing, because New Horizons has a lot of load times, if you guys haven't noticed. And so while it's loading, I'll just start picking up and doing something else. And quite frankly, it's okay if I don't get back to Animal Crossing, if I get sucked into my other world. And then finally, the one I like the least is what I call white knuckling it. And it's where these are not really working. I've tried them all and I'm just forcing myself to do it because I need to get it done. And frankly, that is how many of us got through school. It's how many of us get through even tasks we normally love, but we're having a bad ADHD day. Our ADHD is really distracting us from things. White knuckling it is something I have to do sometimes because I am a professional and I have to be able to turn out consistent work, and I have to be able to consistently teach topics, or if I'm at a convention, I have to consistently prepare for the show. And I actually have videos where I talk about preparing for comp prep, but if you guys are interested in me getting nitty gritty about what I do to work on comics as somebody with ADHD, or how I prepare for teaching as somebody with ADHD, I'm happy to do it. Let me know down in the comments below, because I'm always interested in talking to you guys about what you actually want to know. So, I know I talk about this a lot. This is a happy planner. I'm not like a happy planner convert. I'm like, it's the best thing ever, because it's not. What I like about this is I like the bright colors. It looks like Lisa Frank. If Lisa Frank made a planner for adults, I would have a Lisa Frank planner because the bright colors kind of engage my brain, and it also makes it more fun. A lot of planning accoutrement out there is very like office appropriate, boring as all get out. Or you could bullet journal, but frankly, if I start bullet journaling, it's just going to be me drawing and not actually using it to plan. So I'm trying to like be realistic with who I am as a person and make accommodations rather than like my aspirational. But so I've talked about how I use my Happy Planner in a couple of other videos, so I'll make sure to link those. But this thing is actually really helpful. So usually, like I said, I'm not at home. I'm actually in Louisiana helping after a family surgery. So, I am not like in my normal environment. And when life is like actually being life and not COVID-19 quarantine, I usually have more classes in this thing. It's actually pretty empty, and the classes are how I get paid. So, but what I do, especially days like now where we so many people don't really have the structure they normally would have had going into work, and working from home and being self-employed, I have to be diligent. I have to get things done consistently. I can't be really flaky. And you know, that's not always easy for me, but I have tools like my planner that helps me do it. So usually what I will do is the night before, when I'm winding down, when I'm finished my work, I will sit down with my planner and make a list of the things that I need to get done the next day. And it's usually work related. But if it's, let me see if I can find like an appointment related thing. I may have to go back in time since we ain't been going nowhere, y'all. And I also remove pages from my planner. Okay, so for example, right, on this date right here, there's a box. You can't see it super well. We met with the parish priest to talk about marriage prep stuff, and that was a scheduled appointment. So in my planner, I blocked it off kind of at like the appropriate time. My planner isn't an hourly planner, which is for the best. I'm self-employed, so it's not like everything goes 100% by the hour. So having a more freeform planner is good for me. But I blocked it off at the approximate time, and then I boxed it. And that, in my brain, that's like I'm boxing off that amount of time. It kind of stands up on the page, that sort of thing. So if I have actual appointments, I'll go ahead and I'll block those in when I find out about the appointment. And I block those in my weekly view and in my monthly view, so that it doesn't come up as a surprise. You know, like us ADHD folks, sometimes we forget, and then it's like, oh, I have this thing, and it kind of derails your whole day. So I don't have to worry about that. Let me find one of my normal pages, one of my normal days. So, okay, for example, this is April 10th, okay? What was on it was record flower drawing tutorial, edit PWC video, record end to water lily tutorial, scan watercolor or water lily, share line art to Patreon, make thumbnail for tomorrow's stream, update Twitter thread, upload art to Twitter, Insta, YouTube, promote stream, and then 8 p.m. watercolor live stream. And I wrote kind of some of that the night before, and then some of that during that day. As I accomplished things, I would add new tasks, or as I thought about it, I would add new tasks to the list. So when it comes to creating a schedule, since I'm self-employed, I don't have to submit this to somebody else for their approval. I try to be flexible about it and honest with myself. And it can include things like I white out all the time in my planner. And I'll write stuff in with red to like capture my attention, but most of the time I write it in, which is black, so it's not too distracting. But just generally trying to work with what I know my strengths are and what I know my weaknesses are, and trying to be realistic about those things is really important. Like, that's one of the biggest things about being an adult with ADHD, is not lying to yourself, not looking at other people's lives and deciding your life needs to be that, not making assumptions about other people's lives that you don't know anything actually about, and then beating yourself up because you're not that. And just kind of being like more patient and more realistic with yourself, because when you're an adult, it's not like a parent is doing this for you or a teacher is doing this for you. You have to do this for yourself. So you have to have your own best interests at heart. And by doing that, you're going to be able to get the most out of your time, the most out of your days, without necessarily creating these big anxiety problems. Like, I know for a lot of us with ADHD, and I used to be really, really, really guilty about this. And I talk really bluntly about this because I know other people go through it. And if I can spare you any of that pain, I want to. I used to use, like since I was a kid, I used to use my anxiety, like would intentionally ramp up my anxiety to overcome inertia and procrastination. And it's not like I would wait until the last minute to get things done, because being ADHD, I make a lot of dumb, well, they're not dumb, but they're careless mistakes. I miss things. My brain's tired and I don't catch things. So I always need time to have at least one other person look over my work, and I always need time to revise things. And I've done that since I was in like 3rd grade, and I'm actually really good about it because things I draw, things I write, for many cases, that is a professional reflection of who I am. And especially the writing, it's a professional reflection of who I am. And I knew that even as a kid because I wanted to be a journalist as a kid. So I've always taken that seriously. So in terms of like writing essays or writing my thesis, I never put it off. I always left myself time to respectfully get people, not like, hey man, I got an hour till I have to turn this in. Can you read it for me, please? It'd be like a week. They'd have a week to read it because they have their own stuff going on. And I had friends, I have had friends who will literally give me something like 10 minutes before it's due and be like, can you look over it right now? And it's like, yes, I can for you, but I actually had my own stuff to do and you're being disruptive. Please think about others for a little bit. So I've been on both sides of the situation, and I really don't like doing that to people. So that was never like my kind of procrastination issue. But it would be more like I was one of those people who kind of felt like I had my best ideas when I was a little bit scared. And that's not healthy, and that's also not sustainable. So by the time I was an adult and I'd finished grad school and I was desperately trying to find paying work, I thought I could use anxiety to like goad me into figuring out how to promote myself and to change my art in such a way that people would want to hire me and want to work with me and might like me more and would think to recommend my art. And I couldn't beat myself up into it. It made me, I'm gonna have to flag this video now. I was suicidal, and that was one of the triggers for me, is that I just couldn't figure out a way to get my life to move in the direction I wanted it to. And it wasn't due to lack of work ethic, and it wasn't due to not turning work in, and it wasn't due to being flaky. So, I realized after like 3 years of living like that and hating myself, because it got to the point where I really did hate myself, and I hated who I was, and I hated my body, and I hated just every aspect of me. I hated. I realized that I wasn't a bad person. I didn't deserve to feel like that, and I've been working on finding holistic ways to get more work out of myself. And I think I'm getting there. But I know a lot of us ADHD folks use depression, or we use anxiety, or we use procrastination, and then that last minute adrenaline surge, we use that as stimulation to help us actually get the work done. And I don't have like good solutions to that. Anything I'm going to tell you is going to be the same trite stuff you've heard from your parents, you've heard from your teachers, you've heard from your friends. And if that isn't working for you, then anything I say about that isn't going to work for you, and it's kind of insulting, which is another reason why I always caveat, like, please try to find a counselor, try to find a support group, try to find people who are trained to help you. But it wasn't working for me, and I had to find other things that could work for me. And honestly, being kinder to myself and treating myself like a friend, I've been able to do more with that than I was using anxiety as a whip. So that's kind of why I wanted to talk to you guys today about finding and forcing focus, because I know a lot of us use anxiety as the needle prod to get us to do that, and it's not a healthy or sustainable way to do it. I know it does get results, and when you're in school, it actually gets really good results. Like, it got me great results. But once I graduated from school and I no longer had rubrics and things were no longer clear cut, I really struggled. So I hope this list is helpful for you guys. I'm going to run through it one more time because we're ADHD and repetition is our friend. So it's more like a top 9 for finding or forcing focus is number 1, coffee. Every day I have to have coffee. Helps me get my brain in gear. Number 2, make a list and then maybe prioritize the list. Number 3, play a game of the least I can do. Also playing the game Don't Break the Chain. I don't know if I've talked to you guys about Don't Break the Chain. I've mentioned it in other videos, so I'm only going to mention it really quickly here. So all of these stickers in my planner represent days I worked on 7-inch Cara in a way that moved me closer to the Kickstarter. So that's what I mean by don't break the chain. Every day that I did the work, I rewarded myself for it. And every day you work, it's easier to just keep working on it. And if you do break the chain, try to get back on as soon as possible. Forgive yourself. Don't beat yourself up. You can chalk it up as today was a break day, or, you know, there was a family emergency. I needed to do that. That was my priority. Don't beat yourself up over it, because beating yourself up over breaking the chain makes it way harder. You're punishing yourself for working on this thing, and it creates these negative feedback loops, and then you start to get anxiety, and you start to resent it, and you start to dread it. So you don't want to do that. But rewarding yourself for the days you accomplish it can help create positive feedback and can create positive associations. So next is have a routine and do warm-ups to help you prep for the day, help you get your brain into where it needs to be, into its work mode. And there are other professionals who talk a lot about getting into that brain space, so you may want to look into that. Deciding to do something else in 15 minutes, so you have a limited amount of time and you can just focus on 1 or 2 tasks instead of having the whole day in front of you. You can just focus on getting those couple of things done. The Pomodoro Method, and then switching tasks throughout the day. If you just really cannot focus on one task for whatever reason, or you have a lot to do and you need to get progress done on all of it, the Pomodoro Method and switching helps create that stimulus. It helps create the novelty that our brains seek. Music to groove to help you get into the zone. Alternate with something else that you enjoy that has long waiting periods or long loading time. So you could also be watercoloring, or you could maybe be doing something else while your kid is taking a nap, something like that. And then finally, my least recommended method, that is the method I recommend if you absolutely have to work, like even taking a day off might be better, white knuckling it, which is the bane of our existence. We have done it so much. I feel like if neurotypical people had to white knuckle through things as much as ADHD people have to white knuckle through things, they would definitely, maybe the world would be different, because maybe we would have more accommodations for not having to white knuckle it. I don't know. But we sure have to white knuckle through things enough, so it is my least favorite method. What I absolutely never recommend is don't beat yourself up. Don't have negative self-talk. Don't call yourself trash. Don't call yourself an amateur. Don't call yourself unprofessional. Don't be ugly to yourself just because you're having a hard time focusing that day. Be kind to yourself. Try to encourage yourself, and maybe try to find a group of friends who support you in what you're doing, and their goals are the same as your goals, and you can do it together. So I hope this My Life with ADHD was helpful, useful, and informative for you guys. I have other My Life with ADHD videos that you guys might enjoy. And if you're looking for positive ADHD rap, if you're so tired of seeing us portrayed as obnoxious, busy, loud, annoying, the person who has no friends, the person who never gets it, the person who sleeps around and regrets it, not saying that everyone who enjoys that sort of life regrets it. I'm saying that's the stereotype, is that they do it and then they regret it. I just want to caveat that. If you want to see ADHD portrayed for its positive traits in a positive light, and you want to see an ADHD character who is actually happy, I would really love it if you check out my webcomic, 7-inch Cara. The main character, Cara, is an 11-year-old little girl, and she's coded to be ADHD. Lilliputians don't have ADHD as a definition, but it is not Okay, so my camera was telling me to wrap it up, and it cut off some video, so I do want to kind of catch up back what I kind of lost. So we talked about kind of my top 9, top 10 ways of forcing focus. I talk a lot about ADHD and my experiences with ADHD and my life as a comic artist and my life as a convention artist with ADHD in my Life with ADHD playlist, which I will link in the cards as well as in the description below. I don't even put ads on this series because it's kind of like my gift to you. But if you are looking for more art tutorials that are not necessarily ADHD focused, I have a whole bunch of them here on this channel. I have comic tutorials, I have drawing tutorials, I have comic planning tutorials, I have watercolor tutorials, I have alcohol marker tutorials, I have all sorts of tutorials. So if you're looking for more art goodness, you should definitely stick around, maybe consider subscribing. Always trying to grow the art nerd community here. And if you're looking for fellow artists to talk to, you guys can join me on my art-centric Discord server, the Paintbox. I'll put a link down in the description to the invite code for that as well. And if you're looking for positive ADHD rep, which I know we don't really get a lot of. Usually we're portrayed very specifically, if we're portrayed at all, if we're acknowledged at all. We're the problem child, the disruptive child in class, the overly impulsive adult with a gambling addiction, the overly impulsive adult with a sexual addiction, the adult with addiction problems. And while all of those are things that do happen, that can happen, that are things that people with ADHD do struggle with, it's really exhausting when that's the only depiction of us ever, right? Like real hopeful there. So if you are interested in some positive ADHD rep, I would really love it if you'd read my comic, 7-Inch Kara. You can read the first 6 chapters for free over at 7inchkara.com. And I'm currently working on the Kickstarter for volume 2. So that's going to be chapters 5, 6, 7, 8, and a bonus chapter. I bring it up because the main character, Kara, she's an 11-year-old Lilliputian girl, so she's only 7 inches tall, and she is coded to have ADHD. I modeled her behavior, I modeled her reactions, I modeled her personality a lot on who I was at that age, as well as some of my friends who had ADHD at that age, because I really just wanted to write an ADHD character that people with ADHD would look at and not feel hurt and not feel offended, but would be like, yeah, it's my girl. And while I do think there are some other ADHD coded characters in media, like I definitely think Anna Green Gables has ADHD, and I have a whole vlog coming up where I talk about different characters in media who I think have ADHD. Kara was written by somebody who has ADHD, me, someone who was diagnosed at an early age with ADHD, so that's always been my life. And she was written for other people with ADHD, kids and adults, to see a positive reflection of themselves. It's really important to me that we don't just focus on all the negative aspects. In fact, I have a vlog about the positive things about being ADHD. But she represents a lot of the positive traits. She's very energetic. She's very outgoing. She has this huge adventurous spirit. She's not afraid of anything, which is not a good trait if you're a Lilliputian, but she's fearless. She's very kind. She loves everybody. She loves animals. She can make friends with anybody because she's just so enchanted by the differences in people. She does struggle with some family problems. She does struggle with some friendship problems, but the depiction of ADHD in Kara is meant to be heartwarming. It's meant to be a positive reflection of what makes us, like, our good traits. And I don't think there's enough of that out there. So I really wanted to put that out there. So this is, I mean, she's Lilliputian. ADHD isn't like a diagnosable thing for Lilliputians because it's not necessarily bad traits when you're a tiny person to be able to make decisions impulsively and quickly, or to be able to be constantly on the lookout for stimulus and your brain constantly absorbing that. Not necessarily bad things. So it's not like it's something that would get her ostracized. That's something else that's a little bit unique to 7-Inch Kara, is none of her traits are traits that would be ostracized. So I just wanted to depict a character being loved for who she was, and kind of create something hopeful for people who are maybe tired of being picked on at school, or maybe they have a hard time making friends in adult life, or, you know, you manage, but you never really feel like life is clicking, you know. I know that feeling. And I wanted Kara to not know that feeling, and I wanted to put that out there. So whether you're an adult who enjoys all ages media like Ghibli movies, or you're a kid or you know a kid who could just really use a peaceful escape and a positive depiction of ADHD, that's what 7-Inch Kara is all about. And you can always reach out to me for a friendly ear, although, as I always point out in my videos, I'm not a counselor, I'm not a doctor. If you are looking for anything more than solidarity or a little bit of light advice, I highly recommend you talk to a professional about that. And I'm really touched that some of my Life with ADHD videos inspired some adults to seek a doctor and seek a diagnosis, and now they kind of know what's going on and how they can kind of accommodate that with their ADHD diagnosis. So I'm really proud of you. I know it takes courage, and I'm really grateful that you reached back out to me to tell me that, because these videos are always a risk. I am in a career where it's unlikely that I will be penalized for being ADHD and out about it, but it doesn't mean that doesn't happen. It just means they don't tell me to my face. And I know sometimes talking candidly about what I struggle with might give an employer pause, because they might think that would, having never worked with me, they might think it might affect my work behavior. So I am taking a risk by sharing these, but helping other people and making the path easier for other people with ADHD and normalizing ADHD so that maybe more people get diagnosed, and then there's more of us, and maybe the world can kind of change, and maybe the world can kind of see what's good about us. That's really important to me. So that's hopefully what this series does. So again, it would really mean a lot to me if you would check out 7-Inch Kara. You can do that at 7inchkara.com. You can always reach out to me down in the comments, or you can reach out to me on the paint box. I'm really strongly thinking about making an ADHD channel on that, just to kind of talk about it, you know. We'll see. I'll probably make it a private one though, just so to protect the people who are chatting in it. But anyway, that's something I'm definitely thinking about. I hope my 10 ways to force or inspire focus was helpful, useful, and informative for you guys. If you have a method for inspiring or finding focus that I didn't talk about, let me know down in the comments below, especially if it's kind of weird or something unusual, or if it's something that is so obvious that maybe we miss it. Because I know people read the comments. I read the comments even though I don't always respond to them. And you guys sharing your insight and sharing your experience can really help one another, because that's what a community does, is we help one another. So I'll see you guys again hopefully soon with another My Life with ADHD video. If there's ever a topic you guys want me to talk about, if there's ever something you want to know more about, let me know, reach out to me, and I'm definitely interested in talking about it. I've talked about what it's like to be a convention artist with ADHD and the things I used to do to accommodate that, but I'm happy to talk about how, like, really get into the nitty-gritty of being a comic artist or an artist who's constantly seeking employment, because that's the gig economy, or what it's like to be a teaching artist with ADHD, because I have some tricks, I don't want to say tricks, some techniques I use to help get the most out of myself and help get the most out of my work. So I'll see you guys in another video. Bye guys!